All right, everyone, thank you for coming out. My name is Mason Minnick, and I'll be talking about Charles Dickens. Just a little background about his life before I get started talking about how he really influenced the industrial period was he was born in Portsmouth, England. He was born February in 1812 and died in June of 1870. He died at the age of 58. He was raised up from a family of 8. He was a very poor man and moved around very frequently due to the hard times of the Industrial Revolution. And while he was growing up, he was very interested in literature and his education and how he could further his education. Moving on to his career, kind of starting from the very beginning of his career to the end, when he became famous, it started in 1836, and he started a publication of a journal called the Pickwick Papers. This was a kind of thing that he edited weekly and daily, where he had a story going and had different characters and really emphasized how great he was with taking characters and making them stand out. Within a few years, he became an international literary celebrity. His plots and characters were carefully constructed, which an example of that would be Ebenezer Scrooge, which I'll talk about later in The Christmas Carol. And he went on to write 15 novels, edited a journal for 20 years, wrote 100 short stories, and 5 novels. He was an English writer, social critic, and he was most memorable for his fictional characters. And he was arguably one of the greatest novelists in the Industrial Revolution. Kind of continuing talking about Charles Dickens, he saw very bad effects of the Industrial Revolution and really wanted to illustrate it through his work. He wanted to really emphasize that money is not worth more than people. And kind of talking about this was that, Ebenezer Scrooge, if anybody's read The Christmas Carol, he started out at the very beginning as a very selfish person. And by the time, the story ended, he was very charitable and gave to the people. Before I transition to the next slide, I kind of want to say a quote that has to do with the Industrial Revolution and Charles Dickens. "Suffering has been stronger than all other teachings, and has taught me to understand what your heart used to be. I have been bent and broken, but I hope into a better shape." Again, talking about his work, The Christmas Carol. It was, about a novel that was people in great want. Talking about the characters of Scrooge and the ghost. Scrooge represented a very selfish person at the very beginning of the story, but the ghost, their main part of the story was to help him bring himself more gracious and care about more people. There was much poverty but happiness in the Industrial Revolution because the family, which was in the story of the Christmas Carol, that represented how people, are very happy with each other, and you really don't need money to be happy in the Industrial Revolution. Transition to the next slide. Kind of a closing, which I really want you guys to, get out of the Industrial Revolution of Charles Dickens. Is the Industrial Revolution happened in the 19th century. A lot of people had malnutrition. Work standards were terrible. There was a lot of young kids working, and the housing was terrible. There would be a lot of people living in the same houses. Families didn't have a lot of money, and it was to the extreme with a lot of things. Charles Dickens really wanted to emphasize the understanding that people went through, and he took his illustrations and novels and put them into characters, and so people could realize and learn from today. Like, for instance, like what we learn and read today, we could have an understanding of what happened in the Industrial Revolution. And some other work that he talked about the Industrial Revolution would be Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, and Little Dorrit. They were very similar to the Christmas Carol, as there were certain characters that really illustrated how the Industrial Revolution really was. This is my works cited. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.